Assalamu alaikum everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Farooq Rathore. I'm working as a consultant and associate professor in rehabilitation medicine at AFIM Rawalpindi. And today I'm going to talk about the role of early rehabilitation in stroke unit. The theme of the workshop is Better Stroke Care in Pakistan. And it's important to understand that how rehabilitation can contribute to a better care in Pakistan for stroke patients and all around the globe in lower middle income countries. It is important to note this point that for a stroke patient, it is essential that they get acute care which can result in reduced mortality. But it is also important that they get an integrated multidisciplinary rehabilitation that can reduce disability and improve their chances of integration back into the society as an earning member and reduce long-term disabilities. And this is what I'm going to talk about in my today's talk. My today's talk is going to revolve around four major themes. First of all, I'm going to present the evidence for rehabilitation in stroke units, which has been published in literature. Then I'm going to describe the basic main principles of acute stroke rehabilitation. I'm also going to describe by pictorials what are the different steps in offering acute stroke rehabilitation care to these patients. And this care can be provided by any healthcare professionals, and that's why I made it simple. And last, I'm going to end my talk on a summary and a take-home message. Since we work and live in the 21st century, which is the century for evidence-based medicine, so whatever we say or whatever we claim, especially in medical sciences, we have to back up that claim by randomized controlled trials or large-scale clinical trials. Unfortunately, in the 80s, there was a lack of randomized controlled trial for the effectiveness of different rehabilitation interventions. But things started changing in late 90s and early 2000. Still, we do not have large-scale trials reported from lower middle-income countries, but the data that has been shared from mainly from Europe, Northern America, Australia, Japan, and other technologically advanced countries clearly shows that there is a role for early stroke rehabilitation both in the acute neurology ward and dedicated stroke units. For example, if you go online on this website, which is evidence-based stroke rehabilitation, it gives you a collated information on most of the stroke rehabilitation trials being conducted in different parts of the world. They provide with you an executive summary and a detailed description of all those results. And one of the key points of this website is that an interdisciplinary rehabilitation which combines both the acute and rehabilitation stroke unit, it reduces the death, dependency, and the need for long-term institutionalization and length of stay for the patient. Stroke rehabilitation units, which admit patients both from different ward or facility following acute stroke care, help to improve functional outcomes compared to the standard care that is being provided in the general medical wards. The evidence for stroke rehabilitation started coming in 90s, and one of the randomized controlled trial concluded that there were better outcomes in patients who were treated in stroke units, but only those stroke units which offered both acute comprehensive care as well as coordinated post-stroke rehabilitation. So probably one of the key messages of this presentation would be that in an acute stroke unit, you need to have a good acute care facility, but you also need to have good acute rehabilitation intervention options as well. Acute stroke patients have needs which include both acute care need in order to reduce the mortality and also the acute rehabilitation intervention need which would reduce disability and improve the functional outcome at 3 months, 9 months and 12 months. Units which provide acute care and post-stroke rehabilitation have better outcomes in terms of reduced mortality, better discharge rates, and less readmissions. There were a couple of trials which were published back in 1995 and early 2005, and these trials clearly showed that management in acute stroke rehabilitation unit confers survival benefit which would remain with the patient 10 years after stroke. In the UK, they have started working on this concept of hyperacute stroke unit, the HASUs, and these hyperacute stroke units provide four kinds of services. And as you can see that apart from the rapid specialist assessment by the trained neurologist or a stroke physician, hyperacute treatment like thrombolysis, the physiological and acute neurological monitoring, one of the important aspect of a hyperacute stroke unit is provision of early rehabilitation. So we need to understand that the global norms are changing. Now, rehabilitation is not something that you keep till the end that the patient is about to be discharged or has been discharged and you refer them for physical therapy, physio and exercise and stuff like that. It is something that is being rapidly integrated both in the acute care, in stroke and other acute neurological emergencies as well. So again, another point of this presentation is that rehabilitation is not something cold, rehabilitation is not something optional, and rehabilitation is not something that you would consider at the time of discharge. Rehabilitation should be one of your consideration whenever you are dealing with a patient with acute neurological disability which can lead to long-term issues. Now coming to the principles of stroke rehabilitation. Number one, simple things matter most. So I have kept this presentation simple and I'm going to discuss those simple principles that any of the healthcare professional and any of my colleagues in neurology and even residents in neurology who are not formally trained or have been exposed to rehabilitation medicine can integrate these principles in their acute stroke care. The second thing you need to understand is that rehabilitation or stroke rehabilitation specifically is not nursing care. Nursing care is an important integral aspect of the holistic management, but stroke rehabilitation is a specialized procedure provided with a multidisciplinary team of rehabilitation professionals, and that's totally different from a nursing care. Medical stability is mandatory in order to provide acute stroke rehabilitation services both in the acute stroke unit as well as in the acute neurology ward. Because unfortunately, if the patient is having, let's say, acute pneumonia, deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, the blood pressure is not is fluctuating rapidly. Unfortunately, these kind of patients are not a good candidate for aggressive physical therapy or rehabilitation. These patients can be provided basic steps, but integrated stroke rehabilitation can only start once the patient is medically stable and the neurologist is okay with the rehab team taking over the patient. The next step is that each patient with stroke disability is going to be different, which means that the rehabilitation team has to carefully assess the patient both in the acute stroke unit as well as whenever the patient is moved to a rehabilitation unit. And this may include assessment of the physical disability, cognitive disability, bladder bowel dysfunction, speech and language issues, and dysphagia. Because as we know that stroke can present in different forms and not every patient of stroke is going to have the same disabilities. So depending on the disability that the patient is facing, the rehab team is going to make a plan and they are going to integrate that plan into the acute as well as the long-term care. Coming to the acute phase rehabilitation interventions that we should or we can provide into our acute stroke patient and stroke units, they include number one, positioning, physical therapy, exercises or physiotherapy and mobilization, prevention of aspiration, which is an important cause of mortality in acute stroke patients, and bladder and bowel management, which can lead to long-term disabilities. I'm going to show you some pictorials and I really hope that you find these pictorials useful and you can integrate these kind of information in your own acute stroke management as well. The most important thing about this position and mobilization is that we read a lot of things in the books. Most of the books come from Northern America and Europe, and the things that they mention, the rehabilitation tools they mention, are unfortunately not widely available in Pakistan, which is a resource constrained country. So what we have done over the last 15 years, that we have come up with local solutions that each one of us can integrate in their practice, whether they are working in a high-tech hospital in Karachi or maybe a low-resource hospital in interior Sindh or Punjab. So I really hope that these things can improve the quality of life of your patient and reduce their disabilities. So for example, because of hemiplegia, because of this 0 by 5 muscle power, at least in the acute phase, most of the patient with acute stroke would have this kind of picture. Now this kind of posture, if not corrected, can lead to hemiplegic gait. It can lead to external hip rotator contracture. It can lead to equinus deformity, which can lead to difficulty in walking in the long term and lead to contracture formation. If you read the book would say that you should choose a trochanter roll. Unfortunately, I am unable to see a trochanter roll in common practice in Pakistan. So what we would recommend? We would recommend that you take simple a towel roll. So what you do that you simply take a good new fresh towel and you roll that towel. It should be at least 10 to 12 inches long. And if the towel is not available, you can actually use two 6 inches cray bandages roll, which is freely available almost in every hospital in Pakistan. So you make the patient's leg in a neutral position and you put these two trochanter rolls in form of a cray bandage or a towel under the greater trochanter. and it would lead to this proper positioning, which will help the patient in the long term. The second issue is of foot drop or equinus deformity because of weakness, and this again can lead to TA contracture, which can hamper the mobility of the patient. The book would say that you should use a footboard. Footboards are not commonly available in Pakistan. So a simple thing would be positioning of the patient at the hip. That's the first thing. And you simply take a pillow and you position the patient's foot in a way that it is at a 90-degree of flexion in a neutral position. And as you can say, now the patient's lower limbs are in a neutral and a normal position. And hopefully when the patient regains the muscle power and regains the ability to walk, the gait pattern is going to be as normal as it could be. Instead, having a contracture would hamper the mobility of the patient. Sorry. Shoulder subluxation, shoulder pain, and rotator cuff tears are again very common in stroke patients because of multiple factors. One of the factors is that you should ask the patient's attendant not to manipulate and handle the patient from the hemiplegic or the affected side. It would lead to shoulder subluxation and shoulder rotator cuff tears. And this is the position that you should offer to your patient while they are supine. This is the patient when the patient is on right lateral and left lateral. And we know that the positioning is also absolutely important, and the change of posture is recommended in order to prevent pressure ulcer formation. Shoulder subluxation is a very important cause of chronic hemiplegic shoulder pain. This gets neglected because usually as a routine, most of the physician will not expose the patient's shoulder in order to clearly examine the shoulder. And this is how it looks like. There's no need of going for an X-ray. You can actually use the sulcus sign and it will tell you whether there's a gap between the head of the humerus and the subacromial space. And it will tell you that the patient is most likely having shoulder subluxation. This shoulder subluxation can be helped with a lap tray. But again, the lap tray is not available in Pakistan and most of the developing countries. So what would you do? Simply positioning the patient by placing a pillow under the elbow, which pushes the humeral head back into the cavity, is going to lead to a normal round contour of the shoulder. Then you can ask your physical therapist to do kinesiotaping to keep the shoulder in position, or you can ask for chronic neuromuscular stimulation in form of EMS machine, and that would actually help the patient to regain their lost shoulder function and to reduce the incidence of shoulder subluxation. So as I said, simple things matter most. Bladder management is also an important aspect which usually gets neglected. Why? Because in the ER or in the acute stroke unit, most of the patient with stroke, for the right reason, they get an indwelling catheter. And that indwelling catheter is sometimes not removed even at the time of discharge. And I have seen patients with stroke who have been mobilized, but unfortunately, because of their bladder issue, they still have a bladder catheter in place even after 3 months. We need to understand that unlike other neurological disabilities, like let's assume a spinal cord injury, the bladder dysfunction in stroke is going to be a transient dysfunction. The bladder comes back and starts functioning in case of a stroke patient, unlike in a case of a spinal cord injury patient. So there's no really need to keep the indwelling catheter inside more than 72 hours if it is not medically indicated. So if you have got a really good stroke unit with lot of nursing staff who are trained in management of bladder, or a rehab team who can guide you, then probably you might even want to avoid the indwelling catheter in the first place. And you might want to go for the alternative, like a clean intermittent catheterization, which is more safe and associated with reduced number of urinary tract infections. But if that's not the possibility and you have to catheterize the patient for input-out monitoring, that's fine. That's part of the acute management protocol. Please try to remove the indwelling catheter at the earliest, and do give a trial of spontaneous voiding to your patient, because most of these patients within 72 to 96 hours might regain the ability to spontaneously void. So you should give them a trial of spontaneous voiding and try to remove indwelling catheter if it is not medically indicated. And always try to maintain an intake and output charting. There is a role for pharmacology, like the use of anticholinergics as well, but usually in the acute stroke units, in the first 5 to 7 days, you would not be needing these kind of medicine. So you need these medicine once the patient has been discharged or he's post-stroke more than a month and still he's having a bladder dysfunction. So do not consider pharmacological management of bladder in the acute phase or in the first 5 days. Coming to the dysphagia assessment, because dysphagia and aspiration pneumonia are a very important cause, and aspiration pneumonia can occur up to 40% of the patient with stroke, and many of these cases with stroke would have silent aspiration. which means that we do not even realize that the patient is aspirating and the patient might end in aspiration pneumonia, which can actually be a catastrophic and lead to mortality. So again, simple things matter most. If you have a stroke rehab team available with you, the most important team member who can guide you regarding dysphagia assessment by the bedside is a speech and language pathologist. And again, if it is available, obviously video fluoroscopic assessment and other things are like they are recommended, and they might be available only in the advanced centers. But if you don't have these kind of facility, you can even do simple bedside assessment of dysphagia and risk for aspiration as well. For example, simply asking the patient to take half a teaspoon of water, that would actually give you an idea whether the patient is able to tolerate that amount or not. Number two, you can check for the gag reflex. You can do a complete thorough neurological examination focusing on the cranial nerves. So this can actually also tell you whether your patient is at high risk for dysphagia or high risk for aspiration pneumonia or not. Apart from that, if you have inserted an NG tube for the feed, you need to be aware that still with an NG tube, the patient might have reflux and might end up in aspiration pneumonia. And that's why you have to position the, sorry, you have to appropriately position the patient. And the recommended position even for NG tube feeding is that the patient should not be lying flat on their backs and their head should be elevated somewhere between 35 to 50 degrees. So it's important to understand that even with an NG tube in place, the patient might have reflux and can end in aspiration pneumonia. And at least during the first few days of patient's admission in the acute stroke unit, the feeding of the patient must be monitored or closely observed by one of the healthcare professional. It could be the ward nurse, it could be the physician, the rehab one, or the neurologist, their assistant, or even occupational therapist. Apart from that, if you want to reduce the risk of aspiration for a stroke patient who is improving, these simple compensatory techniques can reduce the risk of aspiration up to 30%. And these things do not cost anything. All they need is vigilance on your part. For example, sitting the patient upright in a chair with the head forward is going to reduce the chances of aspiration. You can modify the consistency of food to pureed solid and thickened liquid. For example, in Pakistan, what we call dalia, sagu dana, and custard. So these things do matter. And a small bolus of food. Please try to make the patient and their caregivers understand what do you mean by a small bolus of food. Unfortunately, मसला ये होता है कि हम अंग्रेजी की किताबें पढ़ के अंग्रेजी लिख के चले आते हैं. मरीज आपका होता है बिल्कुल चिट्टा अनपढ़, उसको समझ नहीं आती डॉक्टर साहब ने कहा क्या है, और वो जब अपना वो बड़ा सा चम्मच उठा के मरीज के मुंह में डालते हैं, द पेशेंट एस्पिरेट्स एंड यू लैंड इनटू ट्रबल. So please clearly tell the patient कि small bolus of food means a teaspoon. एक होता है चाय का चमचा, एक होता है tablespoon. I'm telling you again this thing again and again. Simple things matter most. एक पेशेंट को और उसके अटेंडेंट को सिर्फ ये बता देना what do you mean by a tablespoon and a teaspoon can actually reduce the chances of aspiration in some of your patients. So simple things matter most. And apart from that, if the patient is having, let's assume, right hemiplegia, the right side is weak, he is having a right facial weakness, so you might want to direct the bowl of the food to the left side, away from the weak side, because the food that get accumulated on the weak side and the patient can choke on that bolus of food. So the summary is that stroke rehabilitation is an essential part of a comprehensive stroke unit. So if you plan to have a stroke unit which you would like to call comprehensive, you need to understand you cannot call it comprehensive only with acute neurology services. You have to have a stroke rehabilitation team as a part of member as well. It is a continuum of care and not an optional activity. I'm again repeating this. Stroke rehabilitation is not something that you order at the end of the discharge planning. It is something that you consider on day one as well. And physiotherapy exercises, which are essentially and absolutely important part of the whole paradigm, are just only a part, and they are not the stroke rehab itself. So you have to consider the holistic team approach, which should include a multidisciplinary team including physical therapist, occupational therapist, rehabilitation nurse, a clinical psychologist, a prosthetist and orthotist if you want splints for your patient, and obviously a trained rehabilitation medicine physician. If you want to explore this concept of acute stroke rehabilitation and stroke rehabilitation in stroke units in detail, I would strongly recommend that you go online and explore this website, which is known as Evidence-Based Rehabilitation Stroke Review. It is an absolutely excellent and amazing review of all the evidence available on stroke rehabilitation in the last 40 years. It is basically run by our Canadian colleague in rehabilitation, and they update it after every 2 years. Apart from that, recently the Canadian stroke best practice recommendation in rehabilitation have been published. It's a free resource available online, and anyone who wants to explore this concept further might want to explore these guidelines as well. So I would end my presentation on a call for action, both for my colleagues in neurology who are attending this meeting and for my colleagues in rehabilitation sciences, that first of all, please try to integrate rehabilitation services in your stroke units. It is going to reduce the mortality, reduce the mortality, reduce disability, reduce the level of complication and length of stay for your patients. Wherever possible, try to employ a multidisciplinary team approach instead of only asking for a physical therapy and exercise consult. Apart from that, what is lacking in our setup is we do a lot of work, but unfortunately we lack a collection of data and we do not generate our own local evidence. So far, all the evidence that I have presented and which is available in stroke rehabilitation mostly comes from the developed world, Europe and Northern America. We need to have our own local evidence and our own local data. We have to adapt international guidelines. There are a lot of guidelines available on the role of stroke rehabilitation, both in the acute phase, subacute phase, and in the chronic phase. We need to read those guidelines and then adapt as our own cultural and medical context. And last but not least, at least as rehabilitation professionals, we all know a lot of success stories of patients who were offered acute integrated stroke rehabilitation care and ultimately they had really good outcomes. So probably it's time that we also share those success stories in order to motivate others. So if you have any question, comments, or if you want a copy of the presentation, please feel free to email me at farooqrathore@gmail.com. Thank you very much for your kind listening. Assalamu alaikum.